Hello, my name is Lauren Knapp, and today I will be talking about infancy and toddlerhood. Alright, so I'm going to start by talking about the developing brain. So the first 2 years of life are called infancy and toddlerhood. During the first 2 years, the brain undergoes a growth spurt. It increases in size and in neuron connections. The plasticity of the young brain allows it to be changed as it adapts to the environment. The brain is fine-tuned in response to the person's environment, so early experiences in life can have important consequences for later development. So you want to make sure that your infant is, having good early experiences because it will impact them later in life. The neonatal period. So neonates display several states of arousal, and they are also capable of learning at this period. The neonatal period is the first month of life. This is when birth recovery is happening and their organ system begins to function. The neonate's ability to become accustomed to helps reduce confusion in the environment. So they're basically able to get comfortable. And so this helps them, not be as confused. Not all the time, but most of the time, newborns are given a neurological and behavioral assessment to determine their health. And the neonatal period as a whole sets the stage for development through infancy, because it is the first month of life. Physical and motor development. So the Giselle scales summarize the physical and motor capabilities of average children at different ages. Physical and motor development is influenced by the environment. The first 4 months, physical growth is rapid, which means, it's happening really fast. They're growing out of clothes fast. They're going through clothes fast. By the time they are 5 to 8 months old, this is when they start developing fine motor skills, like hand-eye coordination. At 12 months of age, about 50% of infants are able, they start standing and they start taking their first steps. By the time that, toddlers are 18 months, they begin scribbling and feeding themselves because they are able to determine that they can hold, a marker by themselves and, scribble. Just, make motions like that. Or they can hold a spoon or a fork. It may not be, the right way that we as adults hold it, but they can still hold it and they can still know, okay, like if I use my spoon, like if I hold on to it and I, dip it in my mac and cheese, I can put it up to my mouth and eat it and feed myself. 2-year-olds can usually, pedal a tricycle, they can throw a ball, they can climb. Terrible twos, they start getting into trouble because they can, climb up and get into things that they're not supposed to be in. The role of nutrition in early development, is very important, and I don't think a lot of people understand how important it is because they don't really know much about it. So around the world, malnutrition, which is, not getting enough food or nutrients, results in stunting for about 30% of children under the age of 5. Well, stunting is basically when a child stops growing or, it's put on, it halts their growing, or delays it. So early malnutrition can also delay in learning and it can limit brain development. So it's very important that a child gets nutrition even that early on in life. Most infants drink mainly or only milk for up to 6 months old. Today, healthcare providers encourage mothers to breastfeed rather than bottle feed because breast milk provides, nutrients that they need. it's better immunity, and it's more sterile than bottle feeding them. The primary risk to children is getting a diet with sufficient nutrients, either because foods are unavailable or because they're less nutritious. So nutrients are very important at this age. Sensory and perceptual development. Infants are able to see whenever they are born, but they can only see about 7 to 10 inches in front of them before it gets blurry. But by the time that they are 3 to 4 months of age, infants focus as well as adults. Newborns are highly responsive to human faces, so they, this is why they react to like peekaboo, because they react to facial expressions. So anything, like, you have to be very careful with, what you're doing, because the infant will respond to it. They are able to perceive depth because as early as 6 weeks after birth. Which is very interesting because they won't even be able to understand depth at that age, but they are able to perceive depth. So I found that really interesting myself. Binocular vision starts at about 4 months old, which is, you're getting your normal vision. So your vision starts developing in both eyes, and the views are overlapping and causing you to see the way that you're supposed to. At birth, they can hear, and it starts to improve over a few months, and they are especially drawn to human speech. So they are very interested in humans. I mean, they can hear other sounds like animals or nature, but they are very drawn to humans. Probably because they are one. So newborns are also capable of sensory integration, which is basically taking the 5 senses and they're able to organize it and then respond the way that they're supposed to. Cognitive development, it's basically like infants form perception-based categories even before they acquire a full understanding of what that represents. So just kind of like the perception of depth, they don't know what depth is, but they can perceive it. So Jean Piaget, which is a theorist, very popular in the education world, he believed that infants possess mental structures called schemes. And schemes are categories of thought. The sensory motor period, which is from birth to 2 years old, its adaptation makes basic reflexes transform into concept. Object permanence is a major accomplishment in the development period. Object permanence is basically being able to know that an object is there without actually seeing it. Piaget believed that imitation requires cognitive skills that develop late in this period, but later on, research was able to detect that they were actually able to develop it earlier than what he thought. Symbolic representation, which is precursor to language development. Symbolic representation is basically having memory of visual events. And that leads into language development. Again, Piaget overemphasized the significance of motor development and underemphasized the role that perceptual development plays. So he's a very important theorist to us, but there are some of his theories, because they're theories, they're ideas, they are not, facts. that people have been able to go back and see that they weren't spot on. And so not all of them we really use, but we do use some of them. They're still important to us. The last topic I'm going to talk about is language development. So receptive language develops simultaneously. So receptive language is basically being able to understand words that are written and words that are spoken. Receptive and productive language develop early on, very early on. So babbling, which is very, very common in babies, it serves as a social function, and it helps infants learn the sounds of their language. So deaf babies will actually, they will babble as normal, and whenever a baby that is not deaf will start refining their speech, a deaf baby will not do that. So they babble until they start refining their speech. Most babies say their first word by the time that, by the end of their first year, but it varies child to child. Language explosion it begins at 21 months old, and at 2.5 years old, they start stringing their words together. So they start forming sentences and so on and so on. There are two views of language development, which are imitation and reinforcement. Noam Chomsky proposed that children are biologically programmed to learn language. He did this through LAD, which is language acquisition device. And my last point is cultural factors can influence language development. So if a child is in a home with rich language, they are going to have a larger vocabulary. And that is it. Thank you so much for listening today.